Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling something truly massive. How do you feed a nation of, well, over 1 billion people? And it's a number that's still climbing.
It really is the ultimate survival puzzle, isn't it? And it all boils down to basics. We need food. Proteins, carbs, fats, vitamins, minerals. Everything comes from it. And we rely almost entirely on agriculture and animal husbandry for this.
Right, and when you look at India, the numbers are just staggering. You're talking about needing, what, over 250 million tons of grain every single year just to keep things stable. Why is it always this constant pressure to produce more?
Well, the fundamental constraint is land. You simply can't make more of it. India is already farmed very, very intensively. There's really no significant scope left to increase the area being cultivated.
Okay, so it's not about finding new land.
Not really, no. The only way forward is through efficiency. We have to get dramatically better at increasing production per unit of land. That applies to crops, and it applies to livestock, too.
We all know about the big historical wins, like the Green Revolution boosting grain production and the White Revolution doing the same for milk. Those were huge.
Oh, absolutely foundational. Huge successes. But, and this is where the story takes a twist, those revolutions, they often achieve those high yields by really hammering the natural resources. Water, soil nutrients.
Right.
They were used so intensely.
Right, there was an ecological cost.
A very high one, potentially. We risked damaging the very environmental balance that agriculture depends on. So the mission today, the real challenge, is finding sustainable practices. How do we increase food production without degrading the environment? It's about being smarter, not just, pushing resources harder.
And it's more complicated than just growing the food, isn't it? Having warehouses full of grain doesn't automatically solve hunger. There's an economic dimension, too.
Precisely. Food security hangs on two things. Availability, yes, but also access. If people don't have the money to buy food, well, hunger and malnutrition continue.
And since so many people in India depend on agriculture for their living.
Exactly. Increasing farmers' incomes becomes crucial. It's actually part of the strategy to fight hunger itself.
So it's less about one magic bullet and more about, well, a whole system. Scientific management, integrated farming, like combining crops with livestock, or maybe fish farming.
That integrated approach is key. It provides multiple income streams, buffers against risk. Look, India managed a 4-fold increase in food grain production since the 50s, with only about 25% more land under cultivation.
Wow, 4-fold with only 25% more land.
Yeah, that kind of jump doesn't happen by chance. It was the result of really a 3-pronged strategy looking at the whole cycle.
Okay, let's break that down. The first pillar must be the starting point, the seed itself, right? Crop variety improvement. How do scientists actually build a better seed?
Well, one major technique is hybridization. That's basically crossbreeding plants that are genetically different.
Mixing the genes purposefully.
Yes, exactly. It could be between different varieties, sometimes even different species. The goal is to combine the best traits from both parents. And then, of course, there's genetic modification, introducing a specific desired gene directly.
And what traits are farmers really looking for? I mean, it can't just be about making a bigger tomato.
No. Yield and quality are important, obviously, but resistance is absolutely critical.
Resistance to what?
To stresses. Biotic stresses, that means diseases, insects, things like that. And abiotic stresses, environmental factors like drought, too much salt in the soil, extreme heat. A resilient plant is key.
And I was reading about efficiency traits, too, like how long a plant takes to mature, or even its height.
Vital, absolutely vital. A shorter maturity duration is a game changer. It means a farmer might get 2, maybe even 3 crop cycles in a single year on the same piece of land.
That massively increases the output and the farm's income.
Correct. And for cereals, think rice, wheat dwarfness being shorter is actually a good thing.
Really? Why is that?
Because a shorter plant uses fewer nutrients building up its stem and leaves. More of the resources from the soil and fertilizer go directly into producing the grain. It's just much more efficient.
Okay, so you've engineered this amazing, resilient, efficient seed. Now you need to feed it. That brings us to crop production improvement, starting with soil nutrients.
Right. Plants need about 16 essential nutrients to thrive. Air and water give them carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, but the soil has to provide the other 13.
13 key elements from the ground.
Yep. We group them into macronutrients. Nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium are the big ones, and micronutrients like iron, zinc, needed in smaller amounts. Managing these 13 well is the core of production improvement.
Which leads us straight into that classic debate. Manure versus chemical fertilizers.
Yeah.
The quick fix versus maybe the long game.
That's a good way to put it. Manure, which comes from recycling animal waste, plant waste, compost, is definitely the long-term solution for soil health.
How does it help?
It adds huge amounts of organic matter. This improves the soil structure, helps sandy soil hold water better, helps clay soil drain properly. It's fundamentally about recycling biological waste, which is great for the environment. Think compost, vermicompost using earthworms, even green manure where certain crops are grown just to be plowed back in.
And fertilizers. They give the big yield boost we need, but what's the catch?
Fertilizers provide concentrated NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium for really fast plant growth. They're essential for getting those high yields, especially in intensive farming, but there are risks.
Like what?
Two big ones. First, runoff. If excess fertilizer washes into rivers and lakes, it causes water pollution, algal blooms, that sort of thing. Second, long-term soil health. Continuous use can actually damage soil fertility over time because it doesn't replenish the organic matter, and it can harm the soil's microorganisms.
So a short-term gain, potentially creating a long-term ecological debt.
That's the risk, yes. You have to use them very judiciously.
This makes water management even more critical, especially since so much Indian farming is rain-fed, dependent on the monsoon. Irrigation must be everything.
It's absolutely crucial. India uses a whole range of systems. You've got large canals, river lift systems pulling water directly, traditional dug wells, tube wells, but some of the really clever stuff is happening with decentralized approaches.
Like rainwater harvesting.
Exactly. Rainwater harvesting and watershed management, things like check dams.
Ah, yes. Tell us about check dams. They sound simple, but effective.
They really are brilliant. A check dam is just a small barrier built across a gully or small stream. It does two things. First, it slows down the rainwater runoff, allowing more of it to seep into the ground and recharge the groundwater levels. That's water stored for later use.
Okay. And second?
Critically, by slowing the water flow, it prevents soil erosion. It stops the precious topsoil from being washed away, so it conserves both water and soil. Really smart, low-cost technology.
Okay, so we have better seeds, we're managing nutrients and water better. What's next? The third pillar. Crop protection and smart farming patterns. Using the land itself more intelligently.
Precisely. If land is limited, you need to maximize every square foot. This is where cropping patterns come in. We use a few main strategies. One is mixed cropping.
That's just growing two crops together, like wheat and gram.
Yeah, planting them mixed together in the same field. It's basically an insurance policy. If one crop fails due to disease or pests, you hopefully still get a harvest from the other. Reduces the risk.
Then there's something called intercropping. That sounds more planned.
It is. Intercropping is more precise. You grow two or more crops simultaneously, but in a definite pattern like alternating rows of, say, soybean and maize.
Why do that?
The key is selecting crops with different nutrient needs so they don't compete intensely for the same resources. This maximizes the use of fertilizers and water, plus it can help prevent pests or diseases from spreading rapidly through the entire field because they might only target one of the crops.
Clever. And the third one is crop rotation.
Right. This isn't about growing things together, but in sequence. Growing different crops on the same piece of land in a pre-planned succession year after year.
What's the benefit there?
Depending on moisture and irrigation, it allows farmers to get multiple good harvests within a year. It also helps manage soil fertility as different crops draw different nutrients, and it breaks pest and weed cycles that can build up if you plant the same thing repeatedly.
Makes sense. But even with all this planning, you still have to protect the crops, right? Weeds, insects, diseases, they can wipe out a harvest.
Oh, absolutely. Losses can be huge. Weeds like xanthium or parthenium compete for food, light, water. Insect pests can chew leaves, suck sap, bore into stems or fruit. And pathogens, bacteria, fungi, viruses can cause devastating diseases.
The common solution is pesticides, herbicides, insecticides, fungicides. But we've already touched on the environmental concerns with chemicals. What are the alternatives?
Well, integrated pest management is the goal. Using resistant crop varieties is a first line of defense. Simple mechanical removal of weeds can work on a smaller scale. We already mentioned how intercropping and crop rotation help break pest cycles.
Here are the techniques.
One very effective traditional method is summer plowing. Tilling the fields deeply during the hot summer exposes dormant weeds, their seeds, and pest larvae or eggs to the intense sun and heat. It basically sterilizes the soil naturally, reducing the need for chemicals when the next crop is planted.
Okay, let's pivot slightly. From plants to animals, animal husbandry, managing livestock scientifically. This is just as crucial for protein, dairy, even labor.
Absolutely. And similar principles of efficiency in breeding apply. Take cattle farming, for instance. It's done for milch animals and for draft labor, like pulling plows or carts.
And breeding plays a big role here, too.
A huge role. Crossbreeding is the key strategy. You take exotic or foreign breeds like Jersey or Brown Swiss, which are known for long lactation periods, meaning they produce milk for longer.
Right, high milk yield.
And you cross them with local Indian breeds like Red Sindhi or Sahiwal, which might not produce as much milk but have fantastic natural disease resistance.
Ah, so you're trying to get the best of both worlds.
Exactly. The goal is an animal that has both the high yield and the resilience suited to local conditions.
And does the same logic apply to poultry chickens? For eggs and meat?
Pretty much the same idea. You crossbreed Indian breeds like the seal, perhaps known for its hardiness, with foreign breeds like the Leghorn, famous for egg laying. You're aiming for traits like tolerance to high temperatures, low maintenance needs, and importantly, the ability to thrive on cheaper, more fibrous diets, often using agricultural byproducts. It's all about efficiency and sustainability again.
Okay, let's move to the water. Fish production. A really important, relatively cheap source of animal protein. You've got catching wild fish, capture fishing, and farming fish culture fishery. But the really fascinating thing seems to be composite fish culture.
Ah, yes. This is a fantastic example of applied ecology. It's a system where you raise 5 or 6 different fish species together in the same pond.
5 or 6. Wouldn't they just eat each other or compete fiercely?
That's the genius of it. They are specifically selected because they do not compete for food. They have different feeding habits and occupy different zones in the pond.
Okay, break that down. How does it work?
So you might have catless, which feed only near the surface, then rohus, which feed in the middle water column.
Right.
Then marigolds and common carp are bottom feeders, scavenging down there. And you might even include grass carp, which specifically eat weeds.
Wow, so every level, every niche in the pond's ecosystem is being utilized for food production.
Exactly. Nothing goes to waste. This dramatically increases the total fish yield you can get from that single pond compared to farming just one species.
That's incredibly efficient. What about getting the fish eggs or young fish to start with?
That used to be a bottleneck. Many of these species only breed naturally during the monsoon season, making it hard to get a reliable supply of pure seed. But now, that's largely solved using hormonal stimulation techniques. We can induce the fish to breed in the ponds when needed.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, one last piece of this integrated puzzle. Beekeeping or apiculture?
Yes, an excellent additional income source for farmers. It requires relatively low investment. And besides the main product, honey, you also get beeswax, which is valuable in cosmetics and medicines.
Is there strategy involved here too, like with fish or cattle?
There is, mainly in the choice of bee. While local Indian varieties like Apis cerana indica exist, commercial beekeepers often prefer the Italian bee variety, Apis mellifera.
Why the Italian bee?
Several reasons. It generally has a much higher honey collection capacity. It tends to sting less, which makes handling easier, and it stays in a given beehive for longer periods and breeds very well. It's just, agriculturally speaking, a more productive bee.
And the honey itself, its taste and quality.
That depends almost entirely on the pasturage.
Pasturage.
Yes, the types of flowers available to the bees in the area where the hives are kept. The specific flowers determine the nectar and pollen source, and that directly impacts the flavor, color, and overall quality of the honey. It's a direct link back to the local environment.
So, stepping back and looking at this whole massive effort, feeding over 1 billion people, the solution isn't really one single breakthrough technology.
No, not at all.
It's more like an intricate integration of many smart practices. Better seeds, yes, but also careful water management like check dams, precision cropping patterns, multi-species fish ponds, even choosing the right kind of bee. It's a whole system built around efficiency and, increasingly, sustainability.
That's right. It's holistic. But if we pull that thread further, connecting it all back, we see that implementing many of these effective practices, the best seeds, irrigation systems, proper fertilizer use, even good crop protection requires money, financial input.
Right. Costs money to farm smarter.
It does. And this brings us right back to that tension we talked about earlier. Chemical fertilizers give quick, high yields, which we desperately need, but they carry an environmental cost. Organic methods, like using manure, build long-term soil health, but might yield less in the short term.
So the big question remains.
Yes. How do we find the investment, the economic models to scale up these more sustainable, organic, integrated farming practices? How do we make them productive enough quickly enough to meet the sheer scale of demand from a population still growing beyond a billion? That economic challenge, ensuring sustainability, is also profitable and scalable. That's really the next frontier we have to conquer.